Welcome, welcome, everybody. As you're joining us, as people are getting spooled up, I just want to welcome you to our webinar today. My name is Melissa Martin. I am with ATS Lab Midwest and Mission Learning Systems. So excited to be joined by our partners at B9 Creations to share some really exciting cutting edge 3D printing technology that's totally going to revolutionize how we approach 3D in K-12 education. Now, before we get into the content of today's webinar, just a few housekeeping items for you. First, we do have an audience Q&A time saved for the end of this webinar, but please feel free to submit your questions at any time. We'll collect those and we'll make sure to address those at the end of our half hour. It will be a quick half hour. We've got a lot to share with you, some exciting technology, some great stories. You'll hear personally from an educator. It's going to be amazing. So get ready. But it's like I said, it's going to be a lot of information. So we are recording this and we will have that recording available to you after the webinar so that you can rewatch and you can share with others in your network who you think they'd be interested in this as well. So keep an eye out for an email from us later this week. That's where you'll get that recording. All right, that's all I've got. I do want to introduce our speakers for today's webinar. We have Matt Kirkner, who is the president of ATS Lab Midwest and Mission Learning Systems. He will be moderating today's webinar, so you'll hear from him for a bunch. We also have Danny Mason, who is the vice president of sales and marketing for B9 Creations. And we are also joined by Christina Hittman, who manages CTE for Uplift Education. Without further ado, I will pass things off to Matt.
All right, Melissa. Well, thank you so much for that very, very kind introduction. Thanks so much to our audience for joining us. This is a little reminiscent of the pandemic for me, believe it or not. As those of you who have been with us on this ride through STEM and technical education know, we every single week for a year and a half, 2 years, we did a webinar every single Wednesday. And of course, that was back when we were all sitting in our houses, looking at our water heaters, finding things to do to fill our day. The world looks a little bit different today here in 2024 than it did back then. So we reserve these webinars for topics that, as Melissa suggested in her introduction, are so exciting, are so cutting edge, are so revolutionary that we have to bring them to the world of STEM and technical education. Now, I became aware of B9 Creations technology earlier this year. If you join us next week when we do our webinar on the technical college and community college space, we're going to tell that story about how I learned about this amazing company. For today, suffice it to say, the technology that you are going to see today is truly, truly amazing. And that is why we are all here. Now, one of the things that I learned when I was getting familiar with B9 Creations is the fact that they can print products, that they can print in 3D so fast that we can literally fit a print into a class period. That's really, really important in the world of K-12, as we're going to learn today. But here's what we're going to do. We are going to put the folks at B9 in Rapid City, South Dakota on the spot. Will, their technician, is in their studio and is all set to start a print. So literally live on this webinar, we are kicking off a print at B9 in Rapid City, and we are going to see by the end of this webinar whether or not they are able to truly print an entire part by the end of a 30-minute webinar. So we're going to get that started for you. Hang on for that result here at the end of the webinar. For now, I can't wait to dive into this topic with somebody I've gotten to know really, really well this year. As Melissa mentioned, her name is Danny Mason. Danny is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for B9 Creations. First, Danny, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. We're going to have a great conversation. I can't wait for our audience to learn all about your amazing technology. But let's start with this. All kinds of things going on in additive. Most of our people that are on the webinar today probably in some form are already doing 3D printing, already doing additive manufacturing. Tell us a little bit about the state of additive in K-12 education as it stands today.
Absolutely. 3D printing is impacting nearly every industry on the planet, and schools understand how critical this innovation is to setting students up for future career success. So basically, every school now has an entry-level 3D printer, but they often require teachers to be 3D printing technicians, and teachers, as you know, already have day jobs. So you pair that with this type of technology can be slow, prone to failure, and not coming with ongoing training and support. And it leaves the technology that's in the classrooms today that should be an asset underutilized and rarely, if ever, used directly by students. Educators need to be equipped with printers that are accessible, that help bring curriculum to life and enable students to apply their knowledge in real world ways. I believe students are way too smart and way too capable to not get hands on with 3D printing. And they need to in order to carry those skills into their careers. So there are multiple roads, as you mentioned, for students post-graduation. They could go to universities, technical or community colleges, or frankly, direct into industry. And educators should have the printing technology used in those areas to set students up for success on the road that's right for them. So I believe,
Absolutely.
B9 believes, that we need to close that technology gap.
Close that technology gap for sure. And I will tell you, as somebody that loves talking about the careers available to our students, we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail later in this webinar. So really, really excited for that part of the conversation. But to your point, Danny, first of all, anytime I see technology in a classroom that isn't being utilized, that's an investment that was made by that school that isn't paying dividends. And it breaks my heart to see that. So to hear you talk about the importance of making sure that we can have technology that is readily available, that's easy to learn, easy to set up, we can hit the ground running right in the classroom. Really, really important. And then you talk about just the amazing students that we have and what they're capable of. And I think the deeper we get into the world of education and creating more diverse and interesting pathways for students, the more we realize the incredible things that our young people are indeed capable of. So I really appreciate you highlighting that as well. Let's get into the technology a little bit. I've been able to learn about your product over the course of this year. It really is unique in a number of ways, and would love to hear from your perspective, Danny, a little bit about what makes the technology unique specific to a K-12 classroom.
Yeah, I'd say it really comes down to four things: ease of use, quality, speed, and then the support and training. So as you can see, we're out of the box and printing in 15 minutes with 5 button pushes and 0 user calibrations. That's huge in the classroom environment. And as Will walks through this process is mess free. It goes from printing to cleaning. You don't have to touch the part, and it's fast. As he's going to show here, I'm talking minutes fast, whole parts in a class period. A big differentiator, I have a part here. It doesn't matter if you're printing one part or 100. It takes the same amount of time. And that allows a whole classroom of students to iterate multiple times with their own unique designs inside that class period. It's also the same equipment used in industry, the same repeatability that's demanded by those future careers. And because it's so accurate, it's a learning tool, not a learning curve. The last thing I'd say is this level of training and support. Our definition of success is not, here's a printer, good luck. It's integrating it into the classroom, which means it comes with training, ongoing training, not just one time, responsive US-based support, and a real person who picks up the phone, which, as we all know, can be a rarity these days.
A rarity indeed, and certainly being right here in the United States, having people that are in the lab in your facility, the same hours that our schools and our educators are teaching the technology, super, super valuable. I love the fact that you can set up the technology as quickly as you can. And as you suggest, printing, whether you're printing one part or printing 100, it's that same period of time, right? It's that same class period. And so students are able to connect what they're learning in the classroom immediately to the outcome of that learning. And so I want to go into that topic in a little bit more detail with you, Danny. You know, a lot of times when we think about additive, we think about 3D printing, and everybody focuses on the technology, which is important. They focus on what's happening in the world of additive. That's important as well. But in the end, any of this is really about learning outcomes. What do our students learn? What are they able to do? What do they know when they're done with the process? So touch on that a little bit in terms of what are the students learning, and then how do we tie that to real world applications they're going to see outside the classroom?
Absolutely. I firmly believe that students have to have a skill set that translates across industries and then apply it in a specific context. And that's what 3D printing does. It helps you with everything from creativity and problem solving and design thinking, these things that will carry them forward regardless of the path they choose. It also is a great way to engage students who have different learning styles in the classroom and help them be hands-on in the application of those skills that they're learning. But it does give you technical skill sets that are super valuable as well. You're going to learn CAD with this. You're going to learn different design tools. You're going to learn how to iterate and how to think forward in terms of, how would I get customer feedback? How would I tweak this design to go into manufacturing? And so we've done everything from students have built robots with this. They're in there printing trophies and dabbling in entrepreneurship within their own schools. They're doing rings, architecture programs, everything you can think of in STEM and health sciences, from dental offices to hospitals. They're getting exposure to basically every career on the planet. And that's been a really huge asset to be able to have this technology inside the classroom.
So let me start with this. As somebody that was never the traditional classroom learner, I just couldn't stand sitting there listening to a teacher lecture to me. I had classmates. I know people who can learn that way. That was never my style of learning. So I love hearing your reference to this idea that we can meet students with multiple different types of learning styles where they are, so that regardless of whether they're a classroom learner, they're a theoretical learner, they're a hands-on kinesthetic learner, we're creating these really cool classroom experiences for them. And then from there, as you suggest, all these different applications, whether it's a robot, a trophy, a ring, dental, healthcare, and so on, all of these different opportunities for them to connect what they're learning in the classroom to real world careers, to real world products. And I want to go into a little bit deeper with you on that particular topic, Danny. When we think about what careers are available to our students and what comes after, you mentioned earlier, whether they're going to a technical or community college, a university, direct to workforce, as they look ahead of that and beyond that, what kind of careers are available to students who are learning cutting edge 3D printing and additive manufacturing today?
I like to call it any future-proof career because it's in pretty much every industry you can think of. They're doing things in hospitals. You can see this as an anatomical model of a heart that you can practice surgery. You can go direct and be a dental technician or work in a lab. I have jewelry here. There's things in modeling and entertainment, aerospace and defense, and pretty much every engineering discipline you can think of. Civil, material sciences, mechanical. They're even doing things like bioprinting, where eventually, when you have an implant, it'll be a 3D printed organ or tissue. And so the limit is your imagination. And frankly, we're still seeing the market expand. Every day, I talk to someone who has found a new application or a new industry that's disrupted. And what I really, really believe in is that you need to have students leave with value, with skill sets that the market values, and then they can channel that through the lens of their own gifts and talents and passion so they can find a fulfilling career regardless of where that takes them, because this skill translates across all of those aspects.
Well, and when you think about that, this whole idea of the limit being your imagination and tying students to whatever their passion or their gifts or their outcomes are, so important. And love to think about all the different ideas, all the different challenges, all of the different projects that our students, in many cases, are probably going to come up with on their own. And those are all as somebody who worked in manufacturing for 25 years and has now been in the distribution space for 10. Those are real world applications. Those are real world skills. And then you get to some of the hard skills that you mentioned as well in these applications and all the different products that are available in the marketplace. Additive 3D printing, certainly changing the world. I'm going to introduce our audience to somebody who is also changing the world in this world of Irving, Texas. And her name is, as Melissa mentioned in the introduction, is Christina Hittman. Christina has this awesome title, Manager of Curriculum and Instruction, CTE and CAPS Network Director of Uplift Education, as I suggest, in the state of Texas. And so, first of all, Christina, welcome to our virtual stage. It's so great to have you with us.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about Uplift Education. You've got an incredible mission, a really unique mission. Your students as well, really unique group of students, and I know our audience would love to learn a little bit more.
Sure. Uplift Education, our mission is aligned to, we build intentionally our campuses in low income and minority areas with the intentionality of closing the wage earning gap and college going gap in these communities. And we serve right now over 23,000 scholars in those spaces, in a secondary. So we do CTE 7 through 12. And so that's 26 campuses across the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And so one of the things that is unique is that a lot of our scholars have never encountered, other than their teachers, people that have gone to college or that have or the technology. There are certain communities where kids have 3D printers at their houses, and if we didn't have that technology in our classrooms, then a lot of our scholars would never have exposure to that type of technology. So it's a rare opportunity to serve the community and, in my opinion, the Texas industry, in our area.
So it's a fantastic answer. I think about, I love the use of the word scholars, first of all, and 23,000 of them. Obviously, you're having an impact on those who most need it, right? Our underserved communities, our minority communities. So credit to you and Uplift for the incredible work you're doing. I have a good friend who always tells me, if I can't see it, I can't be it. So you think about a young student who is going through their education pathway, if they don't have firsthand knowledge of these kind of technologies, about the career opportunities that are available to them, there's no way for them to get themselves on that journey. So you're just doing tremendous, tremendous work. Your mission is so important to you. I know, Christina, and all the great life-changing work that your team is doing for these students. You should be commended for that. Absolutely. I know none of this happens without amazing partners, right? We can stand up an awesome CTE program serving, 7 to 12 year to 7th grade to 12th grade students. That's really, really important. But none of that happens by itself. You need a tremendous amount of help. And as one of the things I've learned about you is you've got an incredible gift, as does Uplift Education, for creating relationships with industrial partners. So talk a little bit about what role your industrial partners are playing in the work that you're doing.
Sure. So our CTE department is part of our greater department called Road to College and Career. And we have a whole department dedicated to getting scholars, exactly what it sounds like, to the road to college and career. And we actually work with our scholars post-grad in whichever and track them up to 7 years, because again, our goal is to know that they are, making a living wage, that they've gone to college. And so we strategically partner with industries around our area, whether they're small or large, so that our scholars have direct to workforce opportunities, 2-year type program and 4-year programs. 100% of our scholars are accepted to college out of Uplift Education's Road to College and Career, but we want to be able to support scholars in whatever path that they take. Our largest partnership right now is Baylor Scott and White. We have established a healthcare campus at Uplift called Heights Healthcare Academy. And that's super exciting that academy opened this year. We work with partners, Dallas Colleges in Education and Training, Texas Instruments, B9 now is one of our partners, and the list just goes on and on. But the goal is making these industry touch points, number one, so scholars have exposure to these different types of industry, but also I want to bring what they would be doing in the workforce into the classroom. And so it's beyond a real world experience. I need real world technology in the classroom with these kids so that they have a leg up. So when their application goes in, when their resume goes in, we require portfolios of all of our scholars, 7 through 12. And so by the time they graduate, they have a body of work that they can either use to get into college or they can use to get a job. And so that's very important to me, to be able to network with these industry partners, find out who's using the B9 printer in our area, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and how do we get our scholars that want to go to direct to workforce as technicians, how do we get them in their pipeline? Those that wanted to seek the 2-year degree or even the 4-year degree in engineering, likewise, how do we get our scholars in these pipelines with industries? And that's the main focus of our work with partners.
Real world technologies for real world careers is what I'm hearing. It's amazing. We spent a lot of time with a lot of high schools, comprehensive high schools, career centers, especially the comprehensive high schools. A lot of times what we hear is X percentage of our students went on to college, X percent of our students went on to 4-year universities. Great that that's something they're tracking on the way out of the program, on the way out of the high school. What I'm hearing from you is that that's just the start, that we really have to engage with these students going out as far as 7 years after they graduate, to understand where they're ending up, to understand how the incredible work that's happening at Uplift Education is affecting their lives and putting them on the right pathway so that they can end up in an amazing spot, whether they're going on right after high school from a 2-year college to a 4-year college, studying, as you suggest, engineering, making sure that they're on that right pathway. Credit to your partners like Baylor Scott and White, credit to your partners like B9 Creations, for the incredible work that they are doing in supporting the work that you are doing and creating incredible opportunities for these students. I guess I've got 2 more questions for you, Christina. The first one is, talk a little bit about how the learning that your students are receiving, whether it's in the B9 Creations area or otherwise, how is that giving your students opportunities they never would have had otherwise?
Well, first of all, as you mentioned, I'm a CAPS network coordinator for the district. And so all of our learning is problem problem-based, project-driven learning. So it is based on what we call the International Baccalaureate design process, because we are an International Baccalaureate school for all. So K through 12, you're in the IB programming. It is not based on academics, but the design process is essentially the engineering process. So all of our scholars beginning in 6th grade start getting training on that thinking process. All of their design is written in a journal process. They sketch, they do all the things. And so what that does for us with industry partners like B9 is that gives them an opportunity. Our t-shirt this year is "Design is Intelligence Made Visible." That's their opportunity, is, through products like B9, is that their ideas become, in front of them. And so it doesn't matter if it's graphic design or your traditional CAD class or marketing. We want to go beyond. It's not enough just for a kid to sketch out a logo. We want that logo on things. We want that logo on hats. We want that logo printed on cups. We want to print out keychains on our B9 printers. Whatever it is, we want it to be like the next step that you would really have in a career. We want them in our business programs to come up with a business plan, with a marketing plan, and all of that happens through the CAPS network and the industry partners, mentoring, portfolio development, the opportunity to work with product owners. So you have a real industry person coming to you and going, "Hey, this is what we need." We have scholars right now working with a band, and they're doing their social media marketing campaign. They did a competition. So all of that is through this CAPS process that we bring in, that levels up this industry interaction for our scholars.
Amazing. And hear that, industrial employers, design is intelligence made beautiful. By the way, I'm gonna hit you up for one of those t-shirts, and I'm happy to pay for it, Christina. But I love that line. I love the fact that your students are learning the design process, that they're learning how to write business plans, that they're thinking about how we productize a specific product and market it. Incredible experience that these students are receiving. By the way, for our audience, if you do have questions, in just a moment, we're going to open up the platform for audience Q&A. Before we do that, I have one final question for Christina. And to be honest, Christina, as I've talked with K-12 school districts, as I've talked with K-12 educators about B9 Creations Technologies, one of the questions that I get most frequently is this something that's appropriate for a K-12 district? Because it is some advanced technologies. It's simple to use, but we're thinking about using resin. We're thinking about using DLP technology. What's your message for a K-12 educator that is wondering whether this is appropriate for a quick K-12 program? What would you tell them?
Well, especially for high school, I would say 100%. This is definitely for high school programming, especially if you have engineering in middle school, I would say there as well. But one of the reasons why we chose B9 is for its cross functionality. Danny spoke beautifully to that. We have B9 in our business programs. We have B9 in our digital comm programs. We have B9 in our engineering foundation programs, and including our graphic design and illustration, where they're doing jewelry art and things like that. And so the cross functionality of the product is incredible. It is not difficult to use. Again, it's just so functional and so fast. I have one campus that the traditional spool printer just like runs constantly, just this constant, and that teacher is over the moon when it comes to the B9, just because of how much more. Because again, we're dealing with portfolio. We're talking about multiple iterations. These kids are having product owners designing things for people. And so that time saving capability and the ability to go, wait, that didn't quite work, and immediately go back to the table and not have to wait 2 or 3 class periods before it's their turn at the printer again. Come on, it's a game changer.
A game changer for sure. And I love the idea of a student or a teacher rather being over the moon with the B9 technology. I know Danny Mason and her team at B9 will love hearing that, as did I. What I'm also looking forward to hearing is the questions that we've got coming in from our audience. Melissa, I'm going to kick it back over to you for the time being. And by the way, as Christina suggested, just the time of how quickly we can print a part, we're going to put Will on the spot in just a few minutes as well, right after our audience Q&A, and see how B9 did on fitting a print into this small window, 30 minutes. What questions are you hearing from the audience, Melissa?
Thanks, Matt. And for this first question, I'm going to actually go back a few slides because this individual asked, were the green and blue parts printed on this B9 printer? And I think that's going to refer to this one slide that we have up here. So I'm going to put that up there so people can see it. But Danny, can you talk about the prints that we have here?
Yes, so the green one is the B9 print, and the blue one is a competitor not to be named. So you can kind of get in vivid relief the difference when I say quality and being able to actually see your designs come to life. I can't think of a better visual example than this one that they have here.
Awesome. Thanks, Danny, for explaining that. And I'll pose this next question to you too. This educator says, I have FDM printers. What is different about this process and what is the learning curve?
Yes, so it's going to be a lot faster because you're not individually tracing parts, you're doing a layer at a time. It's going to be a lot more accurate, as these pictures show. And honestly, I think your learning curve will be simpler. You don't have to mess with anything on the printer itself. You put material in, you select your file, and you hit print versus trying to get this spooled up and make it work. The software is built with that in mind as well. We have a ton of automation tools, so you can bring a part in and it'll automatically prepare it for printing without you having to know a ton about the platform. So should be a simpler learning curve, especially since you already have experience with printing.
Awesome. And then maybe if you could share a little bit about the training you provide.
Absolutely. So we do factory startup training, which means everything you need to know about printing care and maintenance of your machine. And we also have a whole bunch of experts, Will included, who are happy to help provide specific guidance on parts or career paths, anything that starts to go more into the curriculum realm outside of the printing technology itself.
Awesome. And then I think we have time for one more question. Danny, industry was referenced a lot during this webinar. So who's using B9 Creations in industry?
Yes. Everyone from Medtronic and Johnson & Johnson to Graco, NASA, the CIA. I don't have clearance to tell you what you're doing, but I saw the order come through. A ton of universities, national research labs, aerospace companies, dental offices, everyone you can think of. If you're seeing same-day dentistry, they're using the 3D printer.
Wonderful. Thank you, Danny. Thank you to everyone who participated. If you've got other questions, I would still encourage you to post those in the Q&A. We'll be able to save those and address them personally to you later. And of course, you can always just contact us later after the webinar to talk more. But at this point, I think we will kick it back over to Matt and Danny to share what we
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's see how we did, Melissa. We put the folks at B9 Creations on the spot. Could they get a print done in the 30-minute window? Let's see how Will did. Hey, look at that.
As overachievers, thank you, Will. Did 4. And I tell you, I heard the print get done. It was about 12 minutes in. And so got it printed, cleaned, and these are ready to go. They're little South Dakota keychains. So maybe if you're nice to Melissa and Matt, you'll get one.
Absolutely. All they have to do is reach out. So we told you this technology was amazing. B9 Creations proved it. And we hope you've enjoyed this webinar. I'm going to ask Melissa to take us home.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to Christina for joining us and telling your story. It's wonderful to hear what you guys are doing in your mission. Thank you to Danny and her team for putting on that great print and for sharing some of your technology. Matt for moderating this webinar. To everyone who's in attendance, this is just the first of a 3-webinar series. So if you come back next week, we'll actually talk about how specifically these printers are being utilized more at a technical community college level in those technical programs. And 2 weeks from now, on November 20th, we'll be talking about how it's being used in universities for undergraduate engineering programs, as well as really cutting edge research, which gets really, really cool. So please come back for the next 2 weeks and invite your colleagues that you might know. As I mentioned, this is being recorded. We will share the recording with everybody by the end of the week. So keep an eye out in your email for that from us. And of course, if you have any questions, you want to know more about B9, you want a sample part, you want to see it in action, you want to talk more, please do reach out to us at Lab Midwest And you can also just respond in that email that we reach out to you with later this week. But that's all we have for now. Thank you all for attending and have a great rest of your afternoon.